In the past couple of weeks, I've spoken primarily about the events of my first couple of years of incarceration, 2002, 2003, 2004. This is the time that I was at High Desert State Prison, and I did time at a lot of prisons, and I wanted to talk about something else this video. I wanted to talk about CSATF. That's the Substance Abuse Treatment Facility in Corcoran, California, a prison where I served time. CSATF is across the street from Old Corcoran, the Corcoran Shoe, where the serious gang members in California are housed. CSATF is a soft prison. It's intended as a program prison. It's most famous as the prison that they sent actor Robert Downey Jr. to whenever he was incarcerated. They sent him there because it's a program prison, because they can keep an eye on the inmates there, because they don't house seriously violent inmates there or erratic inmates, generally speaking. And so they could be confident that nothing unfortunate would happen to him while he was incarcerated, because it would have been very bad publicity. Similarly, I was sent to CSATF because I'd expressed a desire to program. I was going SNY, and they had a reasoned belief that I wasn't going to get myself into any trouble while I was there. The first job that I had at CSATF was a good job. It was a lieutenant's clerk, or program clerk is the more general term for it. I've described the duties of this job before, so I don't want to go into them in any great depth, except to express that it's a job of some responsibility. If you elected to just go back there and screw up, you would actually impact the administration to some degree. You'd make their day worse if you decided you didn't want to do your job on some random day. While I was back there, I had an okay time that I was doing. It was a good program, and it lasted for about a year and a half. My job ended whenever I made an unfortunate mistake. You see, there is something that was referred to as inmate proofing on the computers that clerks had access to. It was basically just a dumbed down group privilege editor for Windows XP, but I'd figured out how to, well, through some technical means, bypass the inmate proofing. And I really had just done it as I was bored and sitting in front of a computer all day, but I had done it. Unfortunately, not only had I done it, I'd shared it with other inmates as, hey, look what I figured out how to do. And so I wasn't really surprised whenever a couple of days later the captain told me that he needed to see me in a back room, and my boss escorted me back there. There were two other staff members waiting, and they expressed to me that they suspected that I'd been involved in getting past the inmate proofing in some way. This was an occasion where perhaps I should have lied, because my honesty ended up costing me a little bit over my term. But I told them in no uncertain terms that I had figured it out, that I hadn't intended to do anything with it, and frankly didn't see how anything could be done, because these are computers that are not connected to anything. All it is a PC in an empty room. I had gotten past the inmate proofing so somebody could use perhaps Microsoft Word or something like that, but I hadn't connected anybody to the internet. I suppose it's a fine distinction, and I had certainly broken the rules, and I then refused to give any more information about who else knew about it or how they could investigate the problem. I wasn't surprised when I was escorted out of the office and I lost my job, but unfortunately, I guess maybe I offended a staff member or some note was put in my file or something, because after that I moved around to this institution a lot. They bounced me from yard to yard like you wouldn't believe. Like anybody who had done time, when I told them how often I was moving, they went, wow. I never left CSATF, but they bounced me from one yard to another to another. I'm going to say probably 6, maybe 8 times in 3 or 4 years, which is a pretty substantial amount. Most people, they go through reception, they make it to the yard they're going to do their time on, and they might move every 3 or 5 years. Some guys don't move at all. Unless you're asking for moves, it's rare to be moved without reason, as I was. I had an opportunity to ask a sergeant with whom I was acquainted, with whom I'd worked, hey, what's going on? Why do I have to move again? Am I being singled out? We were on good terms, and she told me, Channel, I don't know what to tell you. Yes, this is unusual. No, I don't have anything to do with it. Now pack your stuff and put it in the cart and start moving, or I'm going to write you up for refusing a move because those are your only two choices. This may sound harsh or short. I said we were well acquainted. But she was literally giving me my only two choices: refuse the move and be written up, or start putting my stuff in a cart. She had two choices too: hand me the piece of paper with my name on it telling me I was going to move, or lose her job. That was the best she could do for me, I guess, and it didn't answer the question I had, but I was always pretty sure it was as a result of my having bypassed the inmate proofing. This is apropos to this conversation and perhaps the next couple of conversations whenever I talk about CSATF, because having moved around so much from yard to yard, I got a real feel for the prison in a way that I don't think a lot of other inmates did. I had a lot of jobs while I was there because whenever you land on a yard, they're going to assign you a job. You're going to work. It's non-optional. So whenever I got to a yard, I'd look around and try to find a job that I wanted to do rather than the one that was randomly assigned to me by the housing algorithm, I guess, the computer program that just gave me the first job that popped up. If you go out of your way and you proactively look for something and you're willing to pitch yourself a little bit, you can get a decent job most anywhere in CDC, even based upon what your definition of decent job is, because not everybody wanted the same job. There were times whenever yard crew guys, that would be the job you wanted. Maybe in the spring or the fall, whenever the sun was coming out just right and the yard was crowded and only so many people could go out. You just go out there and pick up trash, maybe just a little bag. Somebody threw something down and you'd pick it up. But mostly your job was to kind of just hang out on the yard unless something needed to be done. That was one of my favorite jobs that I did while I was incarcerated. I had it on 3 separate occasions, and it's a very laid-back job. It was a real contrast to working as a clerk. Another job, which is a good job and which I often sought out if I could, was Canteen Clerk. You see, I preferred to work as a clerk because of the RDOs. An RDO is your regular day off. You get 2 of them, for instance, Friday, Saturday, and it just means your weekends, basically, because of course not everybody can take their weekends on Saturday and Sunday, your days off, your weekends. I preferred to work as a clerk because they typically had Saturday, Sunday RDOs. They had weekends off. This was important to me because I had visits regularly. There is a rule regarding visiting in Article 7 of the Title 15, which states that if you want to receive a visit, it can't be during your work hours. There are, of course, some exceptions to the rule. For instance, if you have family who traveled a great distance, or if you haven't received a visit in a long amount of time, they may allow you to receive your visit on that occasion, but if you want to routinely see your family, you're going to have to get a job that has a Saturday-Sunday RDO. The reason that clerk jobs so often have a Saturday-Sunday RDO is because they interact closely with staff members who also tend to have Saturday-Sunday RDOs, the ranking staff members. Since I couldn't work as a program clerk any longer, the next job that I had was a canteen clerk. That's a pretty good job. The canteen is basically the store area where they keep all of the food and cosmetic items or anything like that that inmates are allowed to purchase off of their books. An inmate might have had money sent in from a family member, or he might have earned some money at a prison job. You are allowed to spend that money, and different institutions have different ways of doing it, but essentially you're going to write down all the things that you want to buy on a pre-prepared menu. You'll say, I want 4 of this and 3 of that. And you will either send it through the institutional mail, or you will give it to the canteen workers personally, handing it in at the canteen, or perhaps because you know them. And then they will take it back to the canteen area where the food is kept. It's behind a secure perimeter. The only access between where the food is and the general yard is either the door that the canteen workers go through, or a small window which is used to slide out food to the person who ordered things. My job as a canteen worker on a routine day would be to first show up a little early, perhaps with some of the lists from other inmates. And if a truck had arrived, there were pallets that needed to be taken off the truck, I'd pull them off the truck under the supervision of the free staff. And I would rotate the stock, make sure everything went where it was supposed to be, and the numbers added up. And then I'd start filling orders that people had. Frankie wanted 140 soups, 12 things of Zoom Zooms and Wim Wans, and a bottle of shampoo, because Frankie has long hair. Whatever it might be, you put it into a big box, and you set all these boxes in a row by the window. So that whenever the inmates come and they want to spend their money, all they have to do is look at the list that they pre-prepared and say, yes, those are the things I want. You slide that out, and then they sign a little thing saying they got what they want, and the money is taken off of their books. There are only 1,000 inmates on most yards. Many have far less. And it's not like all of these guys are going to spend an exceptional amount of money, so canteen worker is not a difficult job. You spend a lot of your time just kind of hanging out with the other canteen worker or two that are assigned there and the free staff. The place where I worked was pretty laid back. Of course, you have a refrigerator and a freezer because these things are needed to store, like sodas and ice cream that are sold on yards. So if you have something that you want to keep cool or anything like that, almost any canteen will let you keep your stuff there if you work there. CSATF was unique in this in that we didn't have freezers, but we had compensated as far as, I guess, quality of life or job perks would be described by bringing in a hot plate and a hot pot, a nice fan, and a couple of other little things like that. We'd made a little workout area in the back with some weight bags, and since most days you just hung out for 3, 4, 5 hours, it was a good working environment. Of course, because of institutional exigencies, some days were not laid back. If word went out that a lockdown might be coming, or if we had been locked down, or if for whatever reason a bunch of people needed to shop on the same day instead of spread out over a month, it was a really chaotic job, and you worked as hard as you could, because if I was back there just kind of like hanging out and farting around with my friends while people wanted to spend their money, and we did go on lockdown, well, that's a bunch of guys in their cell that are without coffee and soups or shampoo or whatever it is, literally because of me. And outside of the larger picture moral thing about how we should all do a good job and not just try and get away with as little work as we can, there are real consequences to Frank saying, hey man, I need to go to store today, and you saying, don't worry Frank, I got you, and then you decide to go back there and not really get your job done. As a result, canteen workers generally do a good job by the other inmates that are on the yard, and there are some perks that come with it. Whenever somebody's coming up to the canteen window, if they're a wealthy inmate, if they're high class, they go that full 180 bucks a month, and that's about 10% of inmates maybe really spend money like this. It's considered polite to send the money down the line, a trickle-down economy, if you will. So it's done that they'll say, hey, you guys need anything back there? You need a couple ice creams, a couple sodas? Not everybody who goes big money does this, but it will happen to you at least 15 or 20 times over the course of just working a month in the canteen. That's a huge job perk for a job that only pays 15 or 20 bucks a month most months. All this talk about the jobs that I had and frankly the job that I lost, it has me thinking about a Buddhist doctrine, and I suppose that it's carried over in pretty much every major faith. They call it right labor. The idea that just being a good person isn't enough, generally speaking. The idea of somebody walking up to a mountain and praying and meditating for the rest of their lives is a beautiful thought, but that's outside of the everyday world that we live in. Really, the way that most of us do good, that we make the world a better place, it's not by giving $5 to somebody who needs it. It's not even by being a good husband or wife and father or mother. It's with the jobs we do. Because working all day, especially with a good attitude, providing value for your paycheck, assuming that you have a job that is a decent job, that you're not being taken advantage of. Well, there's real value in that. That's part of being a decent person. I know that it sounds like a bit much, but in your everyday life, try and smile at work. Try and smile whenever you do the things that you have to get through your day, to be a productive member of society. Because some jobs stink. It just is what it is, but that does not impact the attitude that we have whenever we endure them, do them, hopefully succeed at them. Thank you for listening today.